Awesome. Happy Wednesday, everyone. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to join us for Real Insights 2020 Work from Home Edition webinar. Joining me today from Simian are Brian Adden, our Chief Operating Officer, and Jay Brooks, our Chief Technology Officer, and I'm Kelly Atten, Head of Sales. I want to introduce and thank our participants for taking part. Bernadette Rivero, President, EP, Cortez Brothers. Tim Jacobs, Director of Sales, Optimus, and Ann Asperides, owner, Asperides Rep. They'll be providing valuable observations into our real insight findings, all of which come from their direct experiences working with Simian. If you have any questions during the webinar, please click the Q&A button and we'll try and address as we go, or we'll circle back and answer them for you at the end of the presentation. I'd like to start with an overview of our Real Insights analysis. Simian has been at the forefront when it comes to analytics and measuring the effectiveness of showreels. Since our launch in 2009, we've provided useful data that lets our users make more informed decisions during the sales process. We basically invented real analytics. We like to think of it as the DNA of a winning showreel. We did this because we wanted to uncover deeper insights and see why some reels are more successful than others in getting viewed. We published our first Real Insights in 2013. This is our 5th edition since then. Our last one was 2019 for the World Producers Summit in Cannes. During those years, the data remained relatively unchanged, but with the pandemic, we realized people were working differently, which meant viewing data may have changed too. And indeed, we found some significant changes had taken place. Further, we believe some of these are going to stick around after the pandemic has passed. So here's our Real Insights 2020 Work from Home Edition, along with comments from our conversations with over 100 agency head of production. We're sharing them today to help our clients and the industry in general work smarter. Out of the 1 million reels we analyzed, this is a summary of what an average reel looks like. There were about 6.8 spots and just over 2 views per reel. The runtime was 8 minutes with a view time of just over 2 minutes, which equals about 25% of a reel being viewed. The percentage of packaged reels, which are multiple reels sent within one link, was just under 5% of all reels. The individual reel stats contained within the packaged reels were consistent with the rest of our findings. The takeaway here is that you should make sure your reel is as relevant to the creative brief or the storyboard as possible, so you can keep eyeballs focused on your work. So what's the right number of spots to put on your reel? We're so glad you asked. We feel this is one of the most important metrics based on the questions we get from Simian users. If you look at the graph, the left column represents the total percentage of reels viewed. The bottom represents the number of spots in a reel. I'm gonna take this over to Jay and he'll explain how he came up with the numbers and the data.
Yeah, so for every reel sent and viewed, we store all the aggregate metadata for those reels. So what that means is we store dates sent, dates viewed, number of spots sent, spots viewed, view percentages, the length of the reel, and we profile the content sent, so file type, dimensions, formats, etc. Then we store all this in a global repository, and we omit any identifying information on, details of what company it's with, who sent it, any spot specific information. So it's basically just the raw data. From that information, we calculate all these insights. So here for the number of spots, we calculate the total view percentage of every reel based on the number of spots in that reel. Then we take an average over all reels, giving us our optimal number of spots per reel. Kelly?
Thanks so much, Jay. So as you can see, 6 and 1 get the most views. This has been consistent since we started doing Reel Insights. However, during the pandemic, viewing of reels with 5 spots, as well as reels with 7 or 8 spots, jumped considerably. This is obviously due to the work from home environment, and we expect this trend to continue beyond the pandemic. The HOPs also noted they were looking for somewhere between 5 to 7 spots of focus work. I'm going to send this over to Bibi, Ann, and Tim to see what they have to say about this. Bibi?
You know, this has been a really great bit of data for us because we were able to shift internally and start having discussions with agencies when we send out reels about many of our directors and the number of spots they have on their reel. For instance, we have a lot of underrepresented directors on our reel, and we've been able to go in and have the discussion with our sales reps, with the agencies, with the brands with whom we communicate and say, you may be used to getting 6, 7, 8 spots from a director. Our directors don't always have those opportunities. You're going to see fewer. You're going to see 3 or 4, and that is the sum of the jobs that they've been able to access and do. Imagine the possibilities of when they can grow the reel working with you. So we've loved having this particular discussion about the number of spots because it allows us to have internal discussions about how we structure the reels. Are we including a bio? Are we putting a nameplate at the top of a reel so that we remind people of who they're seeing? And it's shifted the way that we put our reels together, how we send them out, and how we communicate with the people that we're trying to reach.
I have to say, as a Department of Sales of 1 person, I felt like I got an A+ on my last 7 years of building reels when I went through this whole deck earlier. But yeah, the 5, 6, 7 sweet spot is something that I've always preached to people. And literally, when I saw your guys' analytics, I didn't think anything other than, yes, I'm doing it how I should be doing it. So it was really, this was a really cool thing to see. It made me smile when I saw it. So I appreciate the data.
So I got an A on that too. My 6 has always been my sweet spot. Thinking that for, unlike what Bibi just said, because that's a different scenario, but with an established director, 4 looked like there just wasn't enough work to show. 8 was egregious. It was just a little abusive, but 6 said it gave the complete story of a director who could address a project. So yeah, and it also just played right. And I'm going to add this thing. I do talk a lot, so shut me up at any time. That doesn't include if they're 2-minute spots. Then it still has to run around 8 minutes.
I totally agree.
We actually had a comment in one of our heads of production surveys about longer spots, and they actually want to see cut downs. So it's something to think about, right, Brian? Didn't we got that response from somebody?
Yeah, we'd heard that a lot of times they're really not interested in seeing 2-minute, 30-second director's cuts. They would rather just see, what aired. And if they want to see more, they'll ask, but the general consensus was kind of, we don't really need to see the full director's cut.
And I can back that up with the data. Looking at the analytics, looking at the viewing patterns on our end, we see over and over again, agencies and brands, when they look at the reels, their eyeballs drift off at about the 30-second mark. So if we send a 20-second piece, that's pretty much as far as we'll get them into the piece. So we have a tendency to put the longer pieces towards the back end of the reel so that agencies can make the choice to dive into the longer pieces if they want, because we know, again, from the analytics, if we put it at the beginning of the reel, people look at the 30-second mark and then jump to the next spot regardless.
I echo that completely.
I couldn't agree more. I put all of my longer spots at the back, and if it's incredibly appropriate and custom for the board, maybe I put it up front, but I do the exact same thing.
Yeah, I agree. All longer spots go to the end, and only if they are so germane to the concept, and also if the project is a long form project as well. So that's, but again, you're right, never at the beginning. You lose them.
Agreed.
Thank you so much, guys, for your input. That's super helpful. Now, movie. Although not something we could measure with analytics, we found in our interviews with heads of production that thumbnails play a major role in whether a reel gets screened or not. They told us that they often skip over reels when the thumbnails don't visually look like they match the creative brief. They actually told us that thumbnails can set the mood for the reel. Tim, Bibi, and Ann, I know you guys will have something to say about this.
The whole reason I'm here is because I had this conversation, I think, with Brian and Kelly, saying that we treat the thumbnails as museum pieces. It's a display. It's, if you are considering a production company or a director as a shop front, we take a lot of care with what we're putting in the window. And so I go in and individually adjust the thumbnails all the time, because if I'm not showing a cohesive look at what the director can do that matches what the job at hand is, then it's harder to sell. And so what you're seeing here with these thumbnails is an example of, the top is me curating carefully 5 spots from directors on our roster. The bottom is what happens when you upload them to Simian. Simian does a really good job, I think, in a lot of ways, much better than Vimeo or YouTube, of grabbing pertinent screen grabs. I don't know what magic is going on behind the scenes. I do not know how the sausage is made, but you make really thoughtful selections that are pertinent to the job at hand. I just like to go in and try to color coordinate and match and make sure there's a consistency across the board. But I like that about Simian. It allows me to go in and grab individual thumbnails, or I can even upload my own photos to match if it's something that I need to adjust a little more.
Yeah, and we even, just based on what you were saying about uploading stuff, I even have gone as far as to color correct thumbnails for directors who, well, and the directors and editors who are into it. I totally support it. When I told Kelly and Brian this, when I first started at Optimus, we had just switched to Simian, and no one had curated, there was no one in my role. So then I had to curate all the thumbnails for 9 editors, a design company, and 12 directors. So I'm very, very much in agreement that this is incredibly important. It took about 3 weeks for me to update every thumbnail when I first started at Optimus, but it was so worth it. I totally believe in it. I think it's really important. It just really helps. It helps, as you were saying, create the look and feel of the, you know, that you want your director or editor to have.
It's a visual shorthand. It's a visual shorthand that helps the creatives, and it's an amazing tool to get your reel screened quickly. I think that your reel can jump to the top of the screening list, and also helps that creative navigate through them. Truth be told, it's a tool I'm going to use more often now that I've gone through this deck. So
thank you so much for that. And our takeaway is pretty much what you're saying too. It's that it's worth taking the time to make sure the thumbnails you choose visually convey what the spot is all about. And a little bonus for Simian users, you can create a thumbnail easily by clicking the Capture Thumbnail button on the frame of your choice. So that's super helpful and awesome.
What's funny is right now at this very moment, I'm going back and forth with the director because I have to have a reel go out in the next few minutes. And the fact that I can do this webinar and discuss what thumbnail we're changing at the same time and do it on the fly tells you what a good tool Simian is. It's just that adaptive.
I'm updating a live reel which holds our websites online with one of my editors, and I just asked his assistant if he could export a more high-res thumbnail so that, because it goes on our website, so I'm taking like extra care with it. Literally doing it right now.
I just want to state for the record, our panelists are not compensated for this.
Thank you, Jay.
So what's the best day and time to send reels? We are sure everyone has a theory about this, but we have some hard data for you. Our graph shows the time on the left column and the days of the week across the bottom. The best day and time to send is in green, and the peak time for viewing reels is in teal. The reels sent Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday between 10 a.m. and 3 p.m. and Thursdays between 11 a.m. and 2 p.m. have the highest chance of getting viewed. The peak time for reels to be viewed is Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. and again on Thursday between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. In our head of production survey, the HOPs said they're watching at all hours, but our data supports the timelines in our graph. And Brian has an interesting take on the shift in viewing time.
Yeah, this new data has changed considerably from years past. Before the pandemic, the best day for viewing kind of fluctuated between Tuesday and Wednesday, depending on the year. And the viewing time was early in the morning, like 5 to 9 a.m. And then again, late morning to mid-afternoon, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. So a big shift. And that change is obviously due to the work from home in less rigid environment. I think definitely we're going to be able to expect viewing trends to continue for the foreseeable future because of work from home and the hybrid of work from home and office. And BB, Tim, are you guys noticing any trends regarding best day and time to send reels and when people are viewing?
Very much. And I don't know if there's more of a discussion of work-life balance now, if it has to do with the pandemic or a mixture of both. But the amount of views that we've gotten on Fridays plunged considerably. Where we used to get most of our views was on Sunday nights. I think people were just catching up or trying to get a head start on the week above, or had just blown through everything on Netflix and really wanted to see director's reels. And then Monday-ish afternoons and very much on Tuesday mornings. But this has made a shift in our workflow now because we know we don't need to rush to get reels out on Friday because they're not going to be seen. So we might take a little more time, spend a little more, thoughtfulness trying to track down extra pieces or curating those thumbnails or making adjustments because we know that we've got a little more breathing room right now. And sometimes it gives us the chance to go in and slide extra spots in throughout the weekend because we know they're not going to get hit until a Monday or Tuesday.
That's a great insight. I'm totally going to use that. That's totally smart. I hadn't thought about that, but yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I don't notice a huge trend in mine, but I literally represent like 19 artists. So we're kind of sending reels out all the time, but that's a great call about Friday and taking a look, because I am sometimes scrambling to get more stuff up, but that's very smart.
I do have a question about this because I get calls on Friday or Thursday to send reels out for viewing over the weekend. Now, I don't know if that's specific to my market, specific to freelance producers or work from home. That's still something that was pre-pandemic and is still going on now for me. So I'm curious about Saturday, Sunday viewing, if you have the analytics on that.
We do, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Jay. Nobody viewed reels on Saturdays. I mean, it was virtually nothing.
Really?
And then I believe
it's really
people
low.
were getting a jump on it on Sunday evenings, but nothing like Monday or Tuesday.
Yeah, you get a small percentage Saturday mornings, and then a small percentage Sunday nights, and then virtually nothing in between.
So I'm not rushing anymore.
Your weekends are yours again, Ann.
Oh my God.
This seminar is already paying for itself for Ann.
Yeah, indeed.
Yes, Costco, here you come. All right.
Engagement graphs is a feature exclusive to Simian. I wanted to mention this here because they're really helpful. They provide visual overlays that show you exactly what was watched, what was rewatched, and what was skipped over within a reel. The feedback we get from our users is that they use engagement graphs to get a sense of what their prospects are looking for, allowing them to make adjustments to reels sometimes before the agency even asks. Like if someone notices an agency keeps rewatching a scene over and over, they might be interested in a certain technique. And then they can edit the reel and give them more spots like that. For those of you that use Simian, engagement graphs can be a powerful tool in your sales arsenal.
Oh, I love this one because this happens a lot. We have a couple of directors on our roster that have very specific techniques. They're technicians and they do things like either tilt shift photography or really quick, fast editorial that doesn't look like anyone else. And if we see through the engagement graphs that an agency is going back and looking at those techniques again and again, then we can have a call with the agency or with our sales team and say, they seem to be gravitating towards that one editorial technique again and again. Do they want to see more of that? Because we didn't want to overload the reel and put 10 of the same thing back to back to back. But if that's what they're liking, we can show that this director or this directing team has a track record of doing that in spades. There's tons of it. So, maybe we can shuffle the reel a little, take a look, let us know. And that's been enough to tip things in our favor sometimes, just to be able to open up and have that discussion of, does the agency want to see more or do they want to see less? Do they want to see the breadth of what a director can do, or do they want to see one specific technique over and over again?
Yeah, I have
Awesome.
kind of a unique thought on this. I represent so many people that I don't have a ton of time to go through this, but I feel like I've noticed this. I feel like it's very much a way to tell what technique they're going for. And oftentimes I will not get shortlisted and I'll keep getting all these reel views and then I'll go look at this and they'll be looking at one scene. So I wish I had more time to take advantage of it, but it's very cool. And it's really funny when we don't get shortlisted, but you can tell they're interested in a technique that one of my directors had on their reel. So I don't use it quite as much as for beneficial as much as it is to figure out what they're doing without me.
And I'm kind of, I'm going in the opposite direction of Bibi. It helps me know what spots don't work. So if I can use that as an argument as, hey guys, you're trying to put the spot back on the, don't put the spot on the reel, it's not working. So that supports when it might be a child you love, but you need to let that child go.
That's a very good insight, Anne, I like that.
Regarding formats and resolution, our data reveals that the traditional 16:9 rectangular screen still rules. Pretty much every HOP we spoke with mentioned 1080p is the standard. It's what they expect to see. One even said anything lower than 1080 felt obsolete. In regarding formats, we expect a steady increase in skyscraper and squares as the shift to vertical video for social and mobile rises. The prevalence of 16:9 and 1080 is backed up by our data and platforms, which shows that most viewing is taking place on desktops for better viewing experiences, and we'll definitely discuss this more in a few minutes.
I want to jump in and say something about this, if you don't mind. This is something that I work with a lot with the companies with whom I work and in assembling reels. If spots don't meet this format, I think that it dates the entire reel. It is a liability for the entire reel. So I totally believe that this data is really important.
We have a question about someone who wanted to know whether they can basically kind of remove their IP address from being seen as having viewed a reel. Are you able to, I'm assuming that question means you're able to kind of view reels anonymously. Jay, do you know if that's possible?
So for short links, it's a little tricky. So if you're logged into Simian, we're not going to count that as a view. But on a short link, if you are logged into, or if you're not logged into Simian, it will count that. But again, that's something we're always refining this stuff. So, that's something we've looked at and we'll probably address at some point in the future.
Yeah, there's always this big push for privacy and people don't want anybody to know that they are being seen doing this, that, or the other. Okay.
Yeah, we try to eliminate all views from staff members or Simian users as we can. That's to say, if you take a short link and you're out on your phone and you happen to open it, yeah, it's going to track that view because it really doesn't know who you are.
Okay, there we go. Kelly, back to you.
Awesome, thank you, Anthony. This is a very interesting section of our Real Insights presentation, and to provide some context, Jay is going to explain the graph here and what it means.
Okay, so what this graph shows is the total percentage of views versus the number of days after being sent that it was viewed. So as you can see, the majority of the reels are viewed in the first 2 to 3 days after sending, then it kind of tapers off a bit. After the two-week mark, we grouped the remaining views together on the graph. But in 2020, there was a significant percentage of views that happened after that 2-week mark. These typically indicate viewing of reels that were shortlisted for a job or maybe just bookmarked for later review. In general, this whole area is something we plan to explore more in our next Real Insights, as we think it's going to reveal some more interesting data. I'm going to pass it over to Brian, who's going to elaborate on some more details here.
Yeah, the lifespan of the reel has changed quite a bit. In our 2013-2015 edition, 80% of reels weren't viewed again after the first view date, and only 5% were viewed again after 2 weeks. I think there are several factors for the new changes. One is Simian's grown significantly, and there are way more reels being sent now than there were in 2013. Number two is the obvious changes to the work from home environment. Also, earlier in the pandemic, jobs were getting pushed. They were being put on hold, and working from home isn't quite as rigid as being in an office either. So in some ways, there's more opportunities for reels to be screened, which has extended the lifespan. Also, as Jay mentioned, the big spike in reel views after 2 weeks was pretty interesting to us. So it jumped from 5% to 20%. So we wanted to find out, and after asking, interviewing 100 or so heads of production, their general consensus was that jobs aren't being awarded until 2-3 weeks after the initial call for reels. So if you're seeing a spike in view notifications again after 2 weeks, there's a pretty good chance you might be shortlisted, which is great. So it's great to see those views jump considerably after 2 weeks. It means people are getting work. Tim, BB, Ann, are you guys seeing any trends in viewing habits after a couple weeks?
Just this morning, actually. Most of our reels get seen within the first few days, obviously. And then there's an uptick that's changed since the pandemic came into play, where it's taking a little longer, I think, to sell through the jobs. So then a few days will pass, and then we get the reels hit more and more. But pretty frequently enough that we keep an eye on the trend, something that we sent out a few months ago will come back to life. We call them those zombie reels. And I had a zombie reel this morning. I got a hit on one that I sent out in January. It was a very specific request for a very specific technique that only a few directors in the world do. Ironically, 2 of my directors happen to specialize in this technique. And so when I got the hit on one of the reels this morning, I saw, okay, so that job that the agency may not have been able to sell through, when the pandemic was at its peak and everyone wanted to shift to, drop kits for filming or crews of 3 people, it looks like that one's probably coming back to life now. So now we can prepare in-house. I can go back to my director and say, do you have anything else in your archives that's in that in that vein? Is there anything else we can show the agency that's happened since the top of the year that might show them that you've gotten even better at what it is you've done? Do you have fresh cuts, director's cuts, any of these things, so that we can just better position you to sell you when this job comes back to life, which we think it's probably going to happen, based again on that spike of a reel that we sent out all the way back in January, coming back now this morning.
Also, just one of the things I think as salespeople we fear is, the over check-in or the bothering someone who's clearly in the middle of creative development or whatever. But when there is a bit of a pause and then you start seeing reel views again, for me, it's like, okay, it's okay to check in, so I kind of use that as like a little bit of a, like, I don't want to bug you if you haven't, nothing's been watched in a little bit, but all of a sudden you start watching again, I might just say, hey, just check it in.
And that makes sense. I'm seeing not just an initial view and a second view. Now I'm seeing kind of in the middle of the week, there might be a little spike. I'm pointing to the graph, the spikes there. So I'm saying multiple views in a longer period of time. And I think that's a reflection of clients being a little unsure, reluctant. Nobody kind of knows where to place their next step. So things are taking longer, and my graph has more peaks longer.
And we really do use this for sales, because if we see, it's sort of like a patient, if it goes beep, 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 all of a sudden we know that something might be coming, something might be circulating. And if it's been a week or so since the lead first came in, we can go back and talk to Ann and say, this might be a good time to mention to the agency producer that our director just shortlisted at one club, right? Or just placed, or is front page news somewhere, or something that might have happened in the last week that they didn't necessarily have on their docket when we sent the reel out, but that has changed, and we can see from the viewing patterns and those little bits of spikes that, are they being considered? Are they getting it closer to a short list? Can we perhaps tip this slightly in our favor by adding new information or no work that they didn't have when we first set the reel out?
I want to add something that you just brought up really interestingly, that it takes a team, because I may not have access to all the analytics. It might be set up differently. I might not be admin in that sense. So I need BB to come back to me and say, oh my God, and I'll jump on that. But it's a team tool. It's not a tool that's just unique to one person.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and one thing to keep in mind is this graph just shows averages. So this is an average of, the worst reel ever sent and the best reel ever sent, where, somewhere in between there's a reel that gets a lot of activity. The graph's going to look a lot different than this. So just something to keep in mind.
Okay.
Alrighty.
One other thing I was going to say about that, sorry, I got a lot of activity in my house, to the team point, I do have outside sales reps. And so when a lead doesn't come directly to me and it comes through them, I kind of let them run with the check-ins. And so I'll oftentimes email Heather and Katie and be like, hey, we're getting a few hits today. Good time to check in. And they're always very thankful for that. And so, yeah, definitely is a team effort with those updates. So, and yeah, and especially the 2 weeks later, like, hey, they're back looking again, go check in.
There's also, you can see also if it gets deadlines, I will often reach out and say, are you good? Are you fine? Do you need more? Let me know. I need to update my people. So it's another good way just to check in and be visible without being annoying, even if you don't make the short list.
My goal in life as my job is to check in and not be annoying. I use a lot of these analytics for that exact reason, which is it's really well said.
Thank you so much, you guys, for that. Next one is, so this is something you probably don't think a lot about, but you should, since the answer is yes. Our data shows that the reels sent via Simian with an email subject line between 19 and 27 characters get 40% of all views. We can really only measure the data we have from emails sent from Simian. However, if you're sending a short link through your own email, we'd be willing to bet that the same rules apply.
This is an interesting one for me, because I don't necessarily send out a lot of reels specifically to agencies. I'm often going through through sales reps. So I'm relying on them to come up with pithy, great reels to go out. When we're dealing with brands directly, we do tend to do shorter, and the reels reflect, the titles of what's on that reel. We label with the name of the director, the job at hand, and the agency. And one thing I have heard from agencies is they're very particular in-house. If you are sending out a reel to the New York offices, you better have the New York agency mentioned there and not accidentally the LA one, or vice versa. So we have to be really careful, but it makes sense that shorter is better than longer.
I went back and counted, and I get an A. I was so Tim, I got another A. But you do try to make it effective, and you try to make it germane, and again, easily digestible and meaningful. And a little humor doesn't hurt.
Oh, that's I've actually never thought of that, but I have to admit, I think I got like a C- on this one. This was literally the one slide I read and I was like, shoot, I don't do that well because I try to put too much information in the subject. So this was a good insight, but yeah, I barely passed this class.
So the takeaway is that if your email subject line is too short or super long, it's going to be overlooked. It's pretty obvious that creative agencies are almost always on Macs, but clients are more often than not on PCs, and that impacts viewing stats as clients are getting more involved in production and post. Contrary to what most people think, very little viewership happens on mobile devices. Our HOPs noted that key decisions are always made viewing on larger screens and not mobile devices. Phoebe, do you have anything to add about that?
I mean, we keep an eye on this, especially now that we have directors that are coming up that are coming through social media more than they are traditional 30-second TV advertisements. So they have, I have a director that specializes in nothing but verticals. He can shoot in any direction. He's really great at the framing, but his specialty and the technique that he has honed and done amazing things with in terms of a camera is verticals, and those are best seen on a cell phone. So we keep an eye on those to see where the trends are going over time. We know that most of what's being seen is on Macs. If we start getting hits that are showing that it's coming in on a PCs, that's actually a tip off that our reels have been passed up the chain of command towards clients, because the agencies are creative and they tend to be on Macs, but then you get towards, the Fortune 500 brands and they're almost entirely on PCs. So if we're talking about the viewing patterns of how a reel is seen and how it can tip us off in advance of what might be coming down the line, if we see it spike, and then go from Mac to PC as it's spiking, then we know we're getting closer to the potential finish line, and we might have to check our directors' availabilities, their calendars, make sure they might be available in the next few days if they happen to be on set, if there could potentially be a conference call coming with an agency. So it's just sort of a little early warning tip off. That I don't know of any other platform or archival system for videos that allows me to have this type of feedback that prepares my team and the directors so thoroughly.
Thank you so much for that, BB. So here's a fun fact. 40% of users send reels via Simian versus short links. Regarding presentation templates, HOPs said that they like to view reels from professional services versus company websites or generic sharing services such as Dropbox. Almost all HOPs said they like to view the work as large as possible with thumbnails below so they can jump from spot to spot easily. I'd love to hear what Anne has to say about this, and you too, BB. And Tim.
So when you refer to this, send reels via Simian versus short links, I have found rather than just send a reel through the Simian platform, the clients with whom I deal want short links. So I do send short links, and that's what's been requested. Normally what they want is a manifest of short links. They don't want five different reels from 5 different platforms. They want all the reels submitted on one sheet. And that's how I've responded to them.
Yeah, this one, I'm back to getting A's in this class because I definitely do the short link. I definitely do the classic bottom, and I definitely customize every single reel no matter what. And I don't send packages. So I agree, Anna. I think I always do short links with the name of our director and the project, and then always in this exact format. So yeah, this was another one when I came across it, I was like, yes, like I never quite know how I'm doing, but I was very excited to see this stat. So
same, and I was always on the fence about whether to do these, elaborate, cool presentations that have different layouts that Simian offers, or if it made more sense to do the short links. So seeing this data made me feel a lot better, because we do tend to send out short links, and it's because with the different timelines that have happened as production has shifted through the last couple of years, the agency may still be in the process of trying to figure out which of a couple of different concepts that are going to be sold better with testing as they're going into animatics, as they're trying to sell it internally. So when they're asking for something like, for instance, comedy reels, they may still be trying to discern whether it's ha-ha funny slapstick comedy, comedy that's very understated and, you know, improv oriented, if it's very art directed comedy. So we'll send short links that say, if you decide to go down the path of art direction, here is one link. If you decide instead that you're really focused on, you know, improv comedy and it's going to come down to dialogue, here's another link. And so in one single email, they have those two options at their hand, so they can just cut and paste and send it out to whoever they need going out. But we still know that those thumbnails are super important, because it's not just a short link, it's the director's artistry, their level of taste, our level of being able to taste, you know, show our taste and discernment, and trying to get close to the target job at hand.
I'm going to echo something else about the short links. I sat with a producer while she assembled reels as they came in, and she's going to take that short link and stick it onto her spreadsheet. And that's how she assembled. That was her process. And hyperlinks don't work. Not a hyperlink, the short link, because you can't take that hyperlink and place it into that spreadsheet. It's got to be that workable short link.
I too asked a producer friend if I could see how they organized their, I had a producer friend tell me they got over 100 reels, you know, and the majority of them were short links, but I asked her if I could watch how she organized her things similar. And she said how helpful it was to have the name and the project. You know, you can just take one look at the short link and know exactly what it's for and what was requested when it was sent out. So,
and then she could pop that into whatever spreadsheet or whatever format she's using to organize all the entries.
And no matter who gets sent that link, it is clear that it's that director for that project. You know what I mean? Right. So it's just you take one look at it, you immediately know that you're on the right link or that you're not on the right link.
Thank you so much for your input. Before we wrap up, and take any questions, I wanted to mention our Reel reports and how they can improve your sales process. Data from Reel reports provides a bird's eye view of how well your talent is performing. It gives you a read on things like which spots have been sent the most or the least, or which get the most views. Coupled with the data from Reel Insights 2020, Reel reports can help reps, company owners, and EPs measure and compare their Reel attributes to industry averages. That gives you an ability to zero in and create Reels that win more bids. Phoebe had an interesting comment about Reel reports and how they help her see trends as they develop. Phoebe, is there anything you can add?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know.
Yeah. Oh yeah, she really did.
I think we actually already covered that.
That's what I get for showing my enthusiasm for Simian spontaneously. But I do feel it. These key takeaways. It's just such a strong sales tool, and I'm not a sales person. I own a production company. I want to sell my directors, but I have to work in conjunction with my entire team. And these takeaways and the data points that I'm able to see make me feel like a much better salesperson than I am.
To be honest, I never knew about these. So participating in, sharing my love for Simian, I also learned something, which I'm totally going to use these now. I've not used them in the past, but I'm excited to. We have a couple of outside reps, and I do between the 3 or 4 of us, we do all the reels. So I'm kind of excited to pull these reports.
I'll add to what BB's saying and what Tim's saying and saying again, it's a village, and BB always involves us with the information she gets. So I encourage, not that I want to help my competition, I just want to help our industry, all you guys out there, that work with your reps and share that data. And it's just powerful.
Thank you so much, you guys. I want to wrap this up and ask if anyone has any questions. Do you see any questions going on?
We have a question about why so many production companies are offering still photographers, and are we going to allow for the proper viewing of the full screen mode as a centered X pixel wide photo / JPEG? There you go. That's in the questions format. Jay, Brian, if you want to take a look at that, whether it's
Well, I don't know if they'll get to it, but I can say what we do as a production company when we're asked for stills, because that is another trend where we're getting asked a lot. If you have directors that also manage still photography, not necessarily because they want the director pausing every 3 seconds to take shots, but because they want there to be consistency across the videos and the stills, is we build PDFs and we create directors' still portfolios. And we slide those right into the reel. So if you hit one of our reels asking for a director, still photographer, the first reel spot on the reel might just actually be a PDF that you can see within the context of Simian's frame. Sometimes we put it at the end. We make it downloadable with the contact information of ours on there. And that works for us. That might not work if you're trying to show 500 still photographs, or if your primary job is arranging the photographs. But for us, where we're juggling both live action and stills, it's worked pretty well up until this point.
Yeah, we do it with our tabletop director, Jameson Mulholland. And one of the things that we found that I think is kind of cool is, so we put them in Simian, and oftentimes we'll put it towards the end of the reel just so that it's aware, but we also put a little photo credit, photo by Jameson. And just, it also, when you get on the spot, the little photo credit we found sort of makes the viewer understand this is not a video that has paused. You know, this is actually a still. So, because at first when we were building the reels, when you watched it just to like QC it ourselves, we were like, it looks like it's glitching, you know? So we put the little signature credit on there, photo by Jameson, yeah, so we have a lot of, we put photos on our reels all the time. It's a great tool.
That's happening more and more, but in my world, always in part with regular production. It's not just a still shoot. And what I've done with that is use Simian's packaging. I might use that in some cases where you have the video aspect of one director's work and then the still aspect, but packaged. So that works. But exactly what Bibi just said is that you put those stills in as content.
Good question, good suggestion.
That's a good idea with the packaging. Sorry, I mean, that's a good idea with the packaging though. That's a smart way to do it. I might steal that also, man.
We have a question about whether we have an iOS app for reel building, analytics, and reporting.
We have Simian Go, which is available in the App Store, and it is for reel building and viewing analytics. There's no reel report feature on the app, but yeah, you can build reels right from your iOS device and see the analytics, and I know a lot of people do, so it's a handy tool.
We have another question, Brian. I'm going to toss it to you real quick in your Slack window.
And just on the iOS thing, it is something that as I actually went on a sales trip last week for a day up to Milwaukee, but as I start to travel again, that Simian Go is wildly helpful. It hasn't been as needed here because I'm just sitting in my bedroom on my computer, but like when in an airport and you get a reel request, being able to do it on your phone is super helpful.
Oh, I used to get tethered to my computer to have to do reels, right? Like I've been around long enough that I had to do them, like editing myself at a desktop. And thankfully now I can do everything on the fly. I've pulled over in traffic to the side of the road to do reels because, you know, sometimes I'm trying to get to my kids' volleyball games, or I have to do school pickups or drop-offs. And, you know, it's just nice to not have to be in front of a desktop or in an office all the time. It really just lets you do them on the fly from wherever you find yourself. I've done them in the line at a bank. I think I sent a video to Simian at one point where I was on a horse-drawn carriage on an island in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. right? Because you do it where you have to do it, and when it's on the go and you still have the analytics there, but you can put the reels together, it's just super freeing. It's really nice to be able to get up and go.
My business model has always been travel every other week, which I'm hopefully going to start doing next week, a little bit, testing my toes in the big travel pond. But yeah, there are times when you don't have your laptop with you, when you can't pull out a laptop standing in line to board the flight. That's my favorite time to assemble reels. So yeah.
I like the backseat of New York taxi cabs also.
Yeah.
I've done them in there, traveling around with my executive producer from meeting to meeting, like.
One of the question was, does the feature that shares what type of computer is viewing the reel offer to production companies using Simian? In analytics, there is when you're viewing the reel in analytics, there's a little actions menu kind of in the middle top of the screen that shows the map. And if you click that, you can see where in the country it was viewed and also what kind of computer and what browser it was on. And something we may add to the reel reports at some time in the future as well is showing browser and platform data. I think that could be pretty helpful. Any other questions out there? Do you have any specific advice for director DP reels, mainly focused on branded content?
I do. We get this all the time, because as a production company, we get approached by directors who want to talk about being in our roster, and they're always sending us montages. Because I don't know if it's film schools or just the world at large is telling directors you have to send a montage when you're talking to an agent, to a production company or an agency, and that's not the case. I don't need to see a montage from a director. I need to be able to see your directing skills and telling a story in 6 seconds, 15, 30, or a minute. I don't need to see how well you edit. And a montage shows me how well you edit stuff together. I need to be able to see those pieces broken apart, and I can't send a montage to an agency. I have to be able to send individual pieces so they can see what you can do A to Z. That's not the same for a DP. With a DP, a montage is okay because we're looking for the consistency of your work across the board. And so that's a difference in the viewing patterns that we see when we send out reels for directors versus DPs. With a DP, we might put the montage up front, and then we put the individual pieces towards the back end.
Oh my God, montage, kiss of death for a director. I'm serious. I'm serious. You can send a montage if you're a food person, a VFX person, a DP, but it's got to have a story arc. I mean, even fashion, you've got to have a little bit of a thread, something that shows directing chops. And so totally echo exactly what you just said.
Well, and the whole point of what I love most about Simian is being able to customize everything based on the board. I mean, I think that's like, what makes great salespeople from average salespeople is actually looking at the board and trying to know what they're looking for and put those on. And I do montages. We have a design company. I have a VFX company, all under one roof. So I will do that same thing where I'll start with the design montage that just shows, 50 projects, and then but I still do the individual spots afterwards. But yeah, I couldn't agree more. Yeah, a montage for a director, total kiss of death.
And Simian's cutting tool is great if you have a long form piece and there's a segment of it that's going to be germane to that concept. You can get it to more palatable size, but not a montage.
Looks like we've got another one. In analytics, how can you separate which spots were watched at different times? Say, for example, when one agency watches the reel 5 times, it seems the analytics are aggregated. Do you want to answer that, Jay?
Yeah, if it's coming from an agency and they're all using the same IP address and you're using a short link, there's no real way to figure out who, who's viewing it. But if you click up at the top of analytics, there's an icon. I forget what it is. If you click on that, that'll show all the individual views and times. So it's on the analytics screen.
Another thing to add to that, kind of off topic, but not really. When you create a short link, it's always important to create a tracking label. So if you're sending it to, an agency in New York, when they click that link, you'll know that the agency in New York clicked that link. And if you want to send that same reel to, several agencies, maybe the best practice is to copy that reel and send it, with a separate tracking label for another agency. And things like that. So you know exactly who's looking at your reel. Are montages okay for tabletop directors? I would be the wrong person to ask there, but BB and Ann are shaking their heads yes. So.
Yeah, that's one time that it's totally appropriate and valuable. BB?
And unless the agency is asking, or the brand or the client is asking for a tabletop director who can tell a story, right? So if it's a job that's only just show me the cheesy, literally cheese porn, or the popcorn or the chicken wings, it's fine for montages. If they're asking for storytelling in addition, then sometimes we'll put a montage of the beginning, especially for food director DPs, that just shows all the food all at once, and then the story portions afterwards, where it's dialogue, how they're working with actors, maybe how they're working with celebrities, how they're bringing it to life. And again, we can tell from the analytics, we can tell what's working and what's not working through the years. So this is, some of those aggregated information you pick up by looking at what's happening behind the scenes with those takeaways.
One more here. Would you add a personal note from the director, like a 30-second? Wait. Would you add a personal note from the director, like a 30-second video, talking to the camera, client, presenting his work, just to make it more personal approach to the client? Again, I'm probably not the right one to answer for that. BB and Ann and Tim might have more insights. I can give a takeaway about slates. Most HOPs said lose the slates. They don't care. I mean, because it's probably in the reel title anyways. They know who it is. So, lose the slates was a thing for them. BB and Tim, you guys have any insight on this question?
I've never heard of anyone doing it. I don't think it's the worst idea I've ever heard, but I've just never heard of anyone doing it, and it could so easily go wrong that I would probably avoid it. But I don't know.
I know a lot of production companies and folks want to give as much information about the director and that as possible. So in that sense, it may be okay, but I'm not the expert here.
I had a company that did that, and they had little bio, instead of bios, a little video clip of each director, and it was very clever and cute. I thought it was really charming. And then the production company didn't like to do it anymore. So personally, to me, I think it's a great way to introduce personality, but apparently I'm the only person in the world who feels that way, and I'm willing to accept being wrong. So
we've, I've worked in advertising since I was 14. So I've had a lot of time to learn to do things the right way and a lot of times to do it the wrong way. And I will say anytime that we've experimented with having the director speak about the work through the years, the agency has been very kind enough to say, don't do that again. Don't ever do that again. So we don't do that anymore.
Yeah,
with the slate,
a written bio
with it
really far. I think the written bio probably covers it. That's funny that someone told you that though.
Multiple times. So we just don't do that anymore. But but we did hear with the slates, talking not to the heads of production, but to the creatives. The creatives did like bios, strangely enough, at the top of the reel. So we were able to switch sometimes and that's the great thing with Simian, is if they tell you, hey, can you put the bio at the end? It's literally there in your hands if you have the app or on your laptop, and you can make that change in half a second. If someone pushes back and says, we don't want the bio, or can you put the bio to the end, or can you push the bio to the front? We want to see the director. We don't want to see the director. And it's really highly able to be changed on the fly.
No, I haven't
So
thought
then
about
you could have the bio as like a video file. It's just like a still with type on it. That's a great idea. I've never done that.
that.
PDFs, we do PDFs.
Those are really, really, really helpful, especially now when people really want to know the director. I just thought of this. I had not done this before, but that might also be a place where you could package. If the agency didn't necessarily want the client to see the bio, you could send that as a package.
Yeah, I've always just put it in the body copy of the email, but I think that's I think that's an interesting idea. I'd like to maybe try it because we have it already written. All you have to do is put it into a little video file, and yeah, that's a very cool idea.
Got a couple more questions here about tracking labels, and can you use 2 different tracking labels, one for internal, one for the agency? And the answer to that is no, because it's a technical thing with tracking labels. You can only really encode it to one link. In analytics, you can tell by the IP address what it was internal or what was an agency, but people working from home, it might be even a little more difficult than that. Is the bio a JPEG? How do you add that? Mostly it's people use PDFs, and you just upload a PDF of the bio and add it to a reel just like you would another spot. If you hit full screen mode, how does that work? You just plays in the video one right after another in full screen, and then it stops once it hits the bio and goes back to the reel presentation. So you'd see the bio. I think that's it.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, you guys, so much. And we're going to post the webinar to our blog if anyone wants to rewatch. Also, we'll send everyone a link so you can download the slides yourself. And then I'm going to add this as well for all of the ones that are not Simian users and would like to test it out. I'd love to set you up with a free trial. Just let me know. And my contact info is right here. Kelly@GoSimian.com. Again, thank you to everyone who joined today. We so appreciate you. And Tim, Bibi, you guys were awesome. Thank you so much. And to everyone who sat in to listen to us. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Bye. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank you. Great, thoughtful questions.